Your shoulders are tight right now. Not because you carried something heavy today, but because there is a persistent, invisible weight pressing down on your chest, right below your collarbone. You notice it most on Sunday mornings. The house is perfectly quiet. The coffee machine hums on the counter. The sunlight pours through the kitchen window in that golden, indifferent way it always does. You are completely safe. Nobody is calling you. Nobody is demanding your presence. You have not stepped inside a church sanctuary in over 2 years. The decision was made. The bridges were burned. The letters of resignation were sent. You walked away at 65 years old. You expected the first morning of your new life to feel like the end of a movie. You expected the credits to roll over a scene of you breathing deeply, feeling weightless, clean, and finally free. But instead, you are sitting at your kitchen table, holding a warm mug, and your stomach is tied in a complicated knot. There is a lingering unease, a quiet apprehension, a feeling that you are doing something terribly wrong just by sitting there. You look at the clock. It is 10:15. You know exactly what song they are singing right now. You know exactly who is standing in the third row. And even though your mind knows that you made the only honest choice you could make, your body feels like a fugitive waiting for the sirens. If this kind of story resonates with you, it is worth clicking subscribe. The algorithm only shows this type of content to those who signal they want more of it. And we have many more of these stories to tell. Stories about the quiet, complicated reality of leaving what you once thought was your entire world. It is a lonely road, but you do not have to walk it completely by yourself. Let us talk about the muscle memory of 65 years. You do not just erase decades of conditioning with a single intellectual decision, no matter how resolute that decision was. You spent a lifetime building your entire social, moral, and psychological architecture around one specific worldview. For 22 years, I was a deacon. I walked the aisles. I sat in the endless committee meetings. I shook the hands at the door. I prayed over the sick in hospital rooms that smelled like bleach and quiet desperation. I tithed 10% of my income, faithfully, without question, month after month, year after year. I built my life in Knoxville, in the heart of East Tennessee, where your congregation is your community, your safety net, your reputation, and your identity. When you walk away from all of that in your late 60s, you do not just lose a belief system. You lose your entire social identity overnight. The routines that governed your week disappear, leaving a massive, echoing void in the middle of your calendar. Your body remembers the rhythms even when your mind has moved on. You wake up early on Sunday out of sheer biological habit. You drive past the building on Tuesday evenings and feel a phantom pull toward the parking lot. I walked into my closet last Tuesday morning. I was just looking for a heavy sweater because the autumn air was finally starting to bite. I pushed aside the winter coats, and there it was, hanging quietly in the back, wrapped in a thin plastic cover. The navy blue suit, the one I wore every single Sunday for 22 years. The fabric felt incredibly familiar under my fingers. And standing there, in the dim light of the closet, a profound wave of grief washed over me. It was a physical sensation, heavy and sudden. It was not just grief for the loss of community. It was grief over lost decades. I stood there, staring at the lapels, and I calculated the hours, the dollars, the raw emotional energy, the fierce devotion I poured into an institution that ultimately required me to check my intellectual honesty at the door. I gave my absolute best years to an illusion, and the anger that mixes with that grief is suffocating. It catches in your throat. You feel betrayed by the institution, yes, but you also feel betrayed by yourself. How did I not see it sooner? Why did it take the death of my wife, the shattering of my heart, and a dusty used book from a garage sale to finally open my eyes? The contrast is what breaks you. You look at that suit. And then you remember the summer you spent in the public library, the summer after the funeral, when the silence in the house became too loud. I sat at a scratched wooden table near the back windows, with the air conditioning humming overhead, cross-referencing ancient texts. I read Baruch Spinoza. I read modern historical scholarship. I stared at the pages that unraveled 50 years of absolute certainty. The afternoon I realized that Genesis 1 and 2 were written by entirely different authors, centuries apart, with conflicting agendas. That was the moment the floor gave way. I made the intellectual leap. I saw the truth. And the truth is supposed to set you free, right? That is the promise. But nobody tells you about the physical toll of that freedom. Nobody tells you that realizing you were lied to does not immediately make the pain go away. It just gives the pain a new address. You remember the way the hymns used to sound. Not the words, but the sheer physical vibration of 200 people singing in unison. That sound used to settle in your bones and convince you that you were a part of something eternal. And now, when you listen to music, there is a strange, hollow space where that certainty used to live. You walk through the grocery store, and you see a face you recognize from the choir. Your instinct, honed over 40 years, is to smile and walk over. But you catch yourself. You remember that they deleted your number. You remember the letter they sent, the one that talked about your spiritual blindness. So you turn your cart down the next aisle. You pretend you are intensely interested in a box of cereal. You are 67 years old, a retired high school history teacher who spent 35 years educating the youth of this city. And you are hiding in the cereal aisle because the social cost of your intellectual honesty is simply too exhausting to navigate on a Tuesday afternoon. You thought the day you left you would feel this instant wave of pure freedom. You imagined stepping out of the church doors for the final time and taking a deep breath of crisp, untainted air. But instead, you spent the first 2 years constantly looking over your shoulder. You spend those first months waiting for the sky to fall. When a family member gets a frightening diagnosis, your first involuntary thought is a flash of panic. You wonder, just for a terrifying second, if this is divine punishment. Are they suffering because I walked away? When the car breaks down, when a financial setback hits, the old fear reactions pop up automatically. You have not believed in a punitive, scorekeeping deity for a long time, but your nervous system has not received the memo. Your mind is completely free, but your body is still waiting for the other shoe to drop. You are flinching at shadows that you know do not exist. And then there is the profound, aching loneliness. When you leave religion in your 20s, it is a rebellion. You are finding yourself. You have plenty of time to build a new tribe, to reinvent your social circles. But when you leave in your 60s, your adult children, your lifelong friends, your neighbors, they look at you like you have completely lost your mind. They look at you as if you have turned into a stranger wearing a familiar face. The loneliness of being misunderstood by your own family is a very specific kind of brutal. You sit at the Thanksgiving table, and the silence is deafening. They smile politely, they pass the potatoes, but there is a wall of thick, bulletproof glass between you and the people you have known for 40 years. They do not ask about your life because they are afraid of the answers. They are afraid that whatever happened to you might somehow be contagious. They think you are going through some bizarre, late-life crisis. They talk about you in hushed tones when you leave the room. They think you are angry at God. They think you want to indulge in some selfish lifestyle without moral accountability in your golden years, as if walking away from your entire support system was the easy way out. The church teaches you from day one that without them, you have no moral compass. They drill it into your head that without their framework, there is no purpose, no boundary, no true goodness. Breaking out of that mindset takes years, because you keep questioning your own capacity to be a good person without their rules. You catch yourself double-checking your own motives. You wonder if your empathy is real or if you are just acting out the scripts they gave you. You are carrying a ghost inside your own skin. And the ghost whispers that you are untethered, drifting, and fundamentally broken. The people still inside the walls will tell you they know exactly what you are feeling. If you ever try to explain the anxiety, the lingering unease, the knots in your stomach, they will nod with that sad, condescending, knowing smile. They will tell you that if leaving was truly liberation, you would feel instant joy and peace. They will say that your persistent, lingering anxiety and your slow, messy freedom are absolute proof that you made a mistake. They will tell you that the deep unease you feel is a supernatural call to return to the fold. They will look at your grief and call it regret. They will look at your disorientation and call it spiritual darkness. And in your weakest moments, at 2 in the morning when the house is too quiet and the reality of your own mortality is staring you in the face, a tiny, terrified part of you wonders if they might be right. The programming runs so deep that you start to weaponize your own healing process against yourself. If you are walking this path right now, if you are quietly unraveling decades of theology and trying to figure out what comes next, you do not have to start from scratch. In the description and in the pinned comment below, you will find a link to the Spinoza Forever Library. It is a 5-volume collection designed for people exactly where you are. It provides the historical context, the philosophical groundwork, and the quiet reassurance that you are not losing your mind. It is a resource I wish I had when I first started pulling on those threads in the dark. You reflect on the sheer scale of the change. It is not just about Sundays. It is about how you view the universe itself. For 65 years, the universe was a deeply personal, meticulously managed hierarchy. There was a plan for your life. There was a reason for your pain. There was an ultimate justice waiting at the end of the timeline. Losing that framework does not just leave you with a different opinion on theology, it leaves you standing in the vast, echoing emptiness of a cosmos that does not care about you. And yet, there is a strange, stark beauty in that emptiness. If the universe does not care about you, then you are free to care about yourself and to care about the people around you, simply because it is the right thing to do. There is no cosmic scorecard. There is just this moment, this breath, and the choices you make right now. The cognitive dissonance you lived with for decades took a massive toll on your body. You were constantly holding 2 contradictory truths in your mind, the reality of the world you observed and the dogma you were required to accept. That kind of mental gymnastics requires an enormous amount of metabolic energy. It is no wonder that the deconstruction process leaves you feeling physically exhausted. Your brain is finally putting down a weight it carried for half a century. You are literally experiencing the fatigue of a mind that has finally stopped running on a hamster wheel of impossible apologetics. Rest is not a luxury right now. It is a biological necessity. You have to give yourself the grace to be tired. When you first step outside the walls, the silence is terrifying, but as the months turn into years, you begin to realize that the silence is not empty. The silence is full of possibility. The noise of the church, the constant barrage of sermons, worship songs, and testimonies, it was all designed to keep you from hearing your own thoughts. It was designed to keep you in a state of perpetual emotional dependency. When the noise stops, you finally have to listen to yourself. You have to figure out what you actually believe, what you actually value, and who you actually are when nobody is watching, judging, or taking attendance. It is the hardest work you will ever do, and it is the most important work you will ever do. You look at the younger generation leaving the church, the ones in their 20s and 30s, and a part of you envies them. They have time. They have decades ahead of them to build secular lives, to raise their children without the burden of religious trauma, to form identities that are not rooted in ancient mythology. You look at your own hands, the hands of a 67-year-old man, and you realize that your timeline is shorter. The urgency is real, but that urgency does not diminish the value of your freedom. In fact, it makes it infinitely more precious. Every day you spend living in reality, living with intellectual honesty and moral integrity, is a victory. It is a profound reclamation of your own life, even if it happens in the final chapters. But I need you to hear this. That persistent knot in your stomach, that sudden spike of panic when things go wrong, that feeling that you are doing something forbidden just by existing on your own terms, it is not what they say it is. It is not proof that you made a mistake. It is not a call to return. It has a name. Clinical psychology and cognitive neuroscience have documented exactly what you are experiencing. You are not weak. You are not crazy. You are simply human. What you called a lack of faith, what you worried might be lingering guilt, is actually an adaptive response. It is the raw, mechanical process of your brain trying to protect you from what it perceives as a threat. For 65 years, your brain was taught that asking questions leads to eternal punishment. It was taught that independence equals death. When you spend 50 or 60 years engaging in repetitive religious rituals, participating in intense group reinforcement, and internalizing deeply ingrained fear-based conditioning, you are literally wiring your brain. You are carving deep, permanent neural pathways. Your nervous system learns to associate compliance with safety and divergence with catastrophic danger. Dr. Daryl Van Tongeren is a clinical psychologist who studies this exact phenomenon. His research shows that exiting a long-held religious identity creates severe psychological disequilibrium. Building authentic, secular flourishing after you leave typically requires 2 to 5 years of deliberate recalibration. Let that sink in for a moment. 2 to 5 years. You are not experiencing a failure of faith. You are experiencing physiological withdrawal. You are experiencing the mechanical decay of broken habit loops. Your brain is slowly rewiring itself, building new pathways that do not depend on fear. It is a biological process, and biological processes take time. Think about what that means. 2 to 5 years just to stabilize, just to stop looking over your shoulder, just to stop bracing for an impact that is never going to come. And yet, the people who stayed behind expect you to either be miserable and ruined, or perfectly, instantly happy to prove that your exit was justified. But the human nervous system does not care about proving a point. It only cares about survival. When you leave, you are stripping away the very coping mechanisms that your body used to regulate its own anxiety. You are taking away the guaranteed answers, the built-in community, the absolute certainty, and you are replacing it with the terrifying, beautiful ambiguity of the real world. Of course it hurts. Of course it is slow. You are completely rebuilding the airplane while you are flying it. Long before modern neuroscience could scan a brain, Baruch Spinoza understood this mechanism perfectly. In his Tractatus, written centuries ago, Spinoza argued that liberating the human mind from religious superstition is inherently a slow, disciplined process. He understood that religious obedience is deeply anchored in our primal emotional cycles of hope and fear. It is rooted in the body's raw survival instincts. True mental freedom, Spinoza wrote, comes only through the gradual, painstaking cultivation of reason. It is never a sudden emotional impulse. It is never a magical overnight transformation. You cannot just snap your fingers and undo half a century of fear. You have to patiently, methodically teach your own mind that it is safe to think. You have to cultivate reason like a garden in dry soil. It requires daily, intentional effort. What you called a lack of courage, what you worried might be lingering guilt, is actually the hard, honest work of re-individuation. Sociological studies on people who leave religion later in life show that it is a protracted biographical transition. It happens in agonizingly slow stages: rejection, realization, frustration, regret, and finally, acceptance. You did not just change your mind about a minor doctrine. You are completely reconstructing your cognitive framework and your entire identity from the ground up. Especially for older adults, the pursuit of autonomy is a long-term restructuring. It requires years of active, deliberate work. The social data shows that people who leave religion after 60 incur immense social costs: family strain, loss of lifelong community, social isolation, all with zero material gain. You did not leave because you wanted an easy life. You left because of intellectual honesty and moral integrity. You were never a casual believer. You were deeply, passionately committed. You taught the classes, you led the meetings, you believed it with every single fiber of your being. And that is exactly why the unraveling takes so much time. Because the belief was woven into the very fabric of your cells. The fact that it hurts, the fact that it feels slow and agonizing, is not proof that you are failing at freedom. It is absolute proof that it was real to you and that you are taking its deconstruction seriously. The fear response in your chest when you hear an ambulance siren is just an echo. It is an evolutionary reflex, not a spiritual truth. You are unlearning how to be afraid. You are teaching your body that the universe is not a courtroom and that every mistake is not a sin requiring blood atonement. The freedom you were promised when you left is not an explosion. It is a slow, quiet thaw. It is the gradual melting of a glacier that has been frozen for 65 years. You do not wake up one morning and suddenly feel completely, ecstatically liberated. Instead, you wake up one morning and realize that you have not worried about eternal punishment for 3 whole weeks. You realize that you can look at a beautiful, fading sunset and just appreciate the magnificent colors without feeling obligated to compose a silent prayer of gratitude to a creator. You realize that your morality is actually much stronger now because it is based on genuine, unforced human empathy, not the terrible threat of eternal torture. The thaw is subtle. It happens in the quiet spaces between the panic attacks. It happens when you finally stop fighting yourself. You can guard your pain and still understand exactly where it came from. The people who look at you with pity, the family members who simply cannot understand your journey, they are just reacting from within the system you managed to escape. The problem was never you. The problem was that the environment demanded a version of you that required the complete suppression of your own mind. You were not breaking when you left. You were responding in a profoundly healthy way to an environment that was fundamentally unhealthy. You were surviving. Again, if you need a companion on this road, the Spinoza Forever Library is linked below. It is there to help you rebuild the foundation with tools that will not crumble when you test them. And if this conversation brought you any clarity today, if it put words to a feeling you have been carrying quietly for months or years, consider using the Super Thanks button below the video. This channel exists because these conversations are necessary. They are the conversations we rarely have in the open, because the social cost of leaving is so unimaginably high. Your support tells the algorithm, and it tells me, that this work deeply matters. You are not just a viewer. You are part of a community of people bravely walking into the daylight, even when the light hurts our eyes at first. I want you to go back to that closet for a second. Think about that navy blue suit hanging in the dark. The suit you wore for 2 decades. The ultimate symbol of everything you thought you were supposed to be. Now you know that looking at it and feeling a twist in your chest is not a sign of weakness. It is not a supernatural call to return to the pews. It is just the fading echo of a past life. It is muscle memory. You can reach out, touch the cold fabric, and say thank you for the times it kept you warm, and then quietly close the door. You do not have to burn the suit to be free. You just have to realize that it does not fit you anymore, and that is perfectly fine. The freedom came slower than you expected, but it is here, and it is entirely yours. You earned it. Every single agonizing day of it. You were doing the absolute best you could with the tools they gave you. The lingering unease is not a failure. It is just the sound of your own mind finally making room for itself. Let me know in the comments. What was the exact moment you realized that the freedom you were searching for was going to be a slow process rather than a sudden event? Write down the small, quiet victory you had this week. I read every single one of them. Take care of yourselves.